All right, we're about to jump into something pretty cool and, yeah, maybe a little nerdy. We're talking about a world where history isn't buried in some dusty tomb, but it's hidden in lines of code. This is the world of cryptoarchaeology. So, when I say archaeologist, what pops into your head? You're probably picturing someone in the desert, right? Carefully, so carefully, brushing dust off some ancient relic, uncovering a piece of history that's been lost for centuries. It's a classic image for sure. But here's the twist. What if the next great frontier for discovery isn't buried under sand at all? What if it's purely digital? So instead of ancient Egypt, we're talking about old, forgotten blockchains. Instead of physical artifacts, we're digging through data that's been frozen in time. We're not brushing off dust, we're sifting through code. It's a totally different kind of dig. So what are we even looking for? What are these digital ruins? Well, we're on the hunt for what you could call digital ghost chains. These are blockchains that were once buzzing with activity, full of promise and excitement, but now they're completely abandoned. And that's really the heart of it. Cryptoarchaeology. It's not about finding lost treasure in the traditional sense. It's about becoming a digital detective. You're diving headfirst into these old, abandoned ledgers to piece together the story. What happened here? Why did it fail? What were the big dreams that were literally coded into the very first block of this chain? Okay, so to really get how these ghost towns even came to be, we gotta rewind the clock. Let's go back to the early 2010s. Bitcoin had just kicked the door down, and what followed was, well, it was like a Cambrian explosion for digital currency. Suddenly, hundreds of new projects, these altcoins, just burst onto the scene. And each one was this wild experiment, trying to take what Bitcoin started and run with it. I mean, look at some of these early pioneers. You had Bitcoin, the OG, in 2009. Then just 2 years later, in 2011, you get Namecoin. Its goal? To decentralize internet domain names. I mean, how ambitious is that? Then a year after that, Peercoin shows up and pioneers the whole proof-of-stake idea. That less energy-intensive way to secure a network that's everywhere today. The point is, these weren't just cheap knockoffs. They were real, genuine experiments. So where did they all go? Well, that's the thing. A lot of these chains, they're basically digital ghost towns now. The community's gone. The developers vanished. The value? Zero. They're like these digital Pompeiis, just perfectly preserved, frozen solid at a very specific moment in history. And this is probably what you're thinking, right? Why on earth would anyone bother with this? What is the point of firing up a node and trying to sync with a blockchain that hasn't seen a single transaction in like a decade? It sounds kind of crazy, but it turns out there are some really good reasons. It really boils down to three main motivations. First, you've got the classic treasure hunt. Yeah, believe it or not, sometimes these old wallets have forgotten coins that might actually still be worth something. Then there's the history lesson. Think of these dead chains as digital fossils. They can teach us so much. And lastly, it's just the pure spirit of exploration, the thrill of finding old puzzles, uncovering forgotten stories, and basically walking in the digital footprints of the very first pioneers. And that's why I love this analogy here. It's just perfect. By digging through the old code, the transaction histories, even the dusty old forum posts, you can see exactly where these projects hit a wall. You can see the dead ends. And understanding why they failed, that's how we build stronger, better stuff today. So it's not just about history for history's sake. These failures are literally the blueprints for future success. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. What's the big takeaway from all this digging? Because it's not just a cool hobby. Exploring these digital fossils, it teaches us something really powerful about how technology itself works. And the idea that sums it all up is this: technological Darwinism. It's survival of the fittest, plain and simple. But instead of the savannah, the battlefield is code and online communities. And the whole thing is happening at like light speed. And watching this play out teaches us some huge lessons. First, just the mind-blowing speed of it all. How fast things evolve and how quickly they become obsolete. Second, it's a huge lesson in humility, right? Today's superstar project could easily be tomorrow's digital ghost town. And maybe the most important lesson of all, failure is just data. When you can see exactly why a project's governance fell apart or how its community just drifted away, you get priceless information for building the next thing. Seriously, these lessons are vital if you want to understand where all of this is headed. All right, so let's wrap this up with one last idea to chew on. If we can be archaeologists for a digital past that was only, 10 years ago, it kind of makes you look at our digital present in a whole new light, doesn't it? Which leads to the big question for all of us. What digital relics are we building right now? Which of the projects we're excited about today are going to be the ghost towns that future explorers are digging through a decade from now? It's a pretty wild way to think about the digital legacy we're creating every single day. Thanks for exploring this with me.